Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the State of Israel and the murder of Jewish people.
Today, President Biden was absolute as he condemned the terrorist attacks Hamas committed in Israel. The president pointed out that Hamas has targeted innocent civilians, including babies and entire families, and kidnapped them to use as human shields. But there are some out there who see things differently. One example, a collection of student groups at Harvard University released a letter blaming Israel for the violence there, saying the events did not occur in a vacuum. This has led to strong backlash from alumni, faculty, and some U.S. lawmakers. One of those lawmakers who spoke up joins us tonight, Democratic Congressman of New York, Torres. Congressman, what was your reaction when you saw that letter?
The letter was an embarrassment. We should live in a world where barbaric acts of terrorism are universally condemned without equivocation, without hesitation, without obfuscation. No one should glorify the terrorism of Hamas as resistance. No one should blame the victim. No one should empathize with Hamas perpetrators who murder babies. No one should refer to Hamas murderers as militants. If you're raping and abducting and murdering and wounding Israelis, you're not a militant, you're a terrorist. And no one ever referred to the 9/11 attackers as militants. And if the murder of babies do not qualify as terrorism, then I'm not sure what qualifies as terrorism.
When two members of your own party released statements critical of Israel, you called those remarks reprehensible and repulsive. Have you spoken to either of them since?
I have not spoken to either one of them, but I would make a simple point. If I were speaking to you who lost a child, right, I could not imagine anything more indecent, more callous, more cruel than saying, it's your fault. You brought it upon yourself. For me, it's not about politics, it's about human decency, and we should be expressing condolences to Israeli victims. We should be showing support and solidarity. We should be condemning in no uncertain terms the barbarity and the savagery of Hamas. There's no need to politicize. There's no need to psychoanalyze the feelings of Hamas. I'm no more interested in a psychoanalysis of Hamas than I am interested in a psychoanalysis of ISIS or Al Qaeda. These are terrorist organizations that have to be held accountable, that should be brought to justice, and that should be driven from power.
President Biden was unequivocal in his support for Israel in his speech earlier today. What did you think of his remarks?
Look, President Biden is one of the most pro-Israel presidents we've seen. I thought he struck exactly the right tone. The United States and Israel are home to almost all of the world's Jewish population. There's a special relationship between the United States and Israel. And as a friend of Israel, we have an obligation to stand with Israel in its moment of greatest need as it seeks to defend itself in the face of unprecedented terrorism.
You first visited Israel in 2015. You called it a life-changing experience. For those of us who have never been there, what do you want us to know?
So I've been to Israel on 5 occasions. I visited the civilian communities along the border with Gaza. I've met with families who live under the terror of relentless rocket fire and home invasions. I've seen the children who have been profoundly shaken by post-traumatic stress. And I've been inside those homes that can turn into war zones in the blink of an eye. And so I ask the world to have empathy for the plight of Israelis who are facing a level of insecurity that most of us will never know here in the United States. Israel's surrounded by hostile forces. We're surrounded by allies like Mexico and Canada. And so before we judge, we should have empathy for the security situation, for the plight of the Israeli people.
We're going to end on empathy. It's something we can all use all the time. Congressman, thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.